Hey, what's up everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth. So today we're going to do the what's next on the former WBA regular 130-pound champion at super featherweight, Rene Alvarado, following his rubber match loss to Roger Gutierrez. They fought for a third time on August 14th as they fought on the undercard of a DAZN, of the Virgil Ortiz Mean Machine main event. And, Alvarado was kind of surprising because Alvarado knocked out, in 2017, he knocked out Gutierrez without question. Was winning the whole fight, knocked him out in the 7th round. They fought in a rematch in January of this year. And outside of 3 knockdowns, that were the difference for Alvarado in terms of losing the fight. Alvarado probably should have, he probably would have won the fight. Well, he would have won, not probably. He would have won that fight without those 3 knockdowns. Even if he just suffered 1 knockdown, he still wins the fight by 1 point on all 3 cards. And if he didn't suffer the 12th round knockdown against Gutierrez, he would have walked away with a draw and held on to the world title. But he got knocked down 3 times. That was the difference. He lost by 1 point on all 3 scorecards and lost his world title in the process. So the rubber match was likely. Everybody thought it was a fight of the year candidate back in January, so the 3rd fight was going to happen. And in August it happened, and Gutierrez, the bigger man, used his height and his reach, and he just outboxed and kept Alvarado at bay. It was a good fight, but Alvarado lost 8-4 on 2 scorecards and 5-3 on the other one. So it was somewhat close. It was competitive, but Gutierrez was the better man, and Alvarado walks away the loser. So now, what's next? What's possibly next for Alvarado following that loss? Well, the cool thing about Alvarado, 10 losses in his career. Prior to beating Andrew Cancio in 2019 and even becoming the #1 contender, Alvarado was a career kind of a journeyman. Kind of that, I don't like using the word stepping stone anymore, but he was more like a gatekeeper is what Alvarado was. And then he knocked out Cancio in their rematch and became a world champion for his first time. But the good thing about a guy like Alvarado, if he wants to resume his career, which I think he should, he can still be competitive, he can go back to that kind of gatekeeper status, and he's not going to be seen as a serious threat. And now he's kind of got some more cred. He's considered, to be like hey, this guy was a former champ, I'm going to fight him type attitude from some of the other fighters. So let's run through the top 10 and see what possibly could be next for Rene Alvarado. We start with #1 undefeated WBC champion Oscar Valdez. Well, Valdez is for sure in his next fight fighting Robinson Canseco, and that's in September. He gets by that, it's kind of up in the air what he's going to do. A lot of people want to see him fight the winner of Stevenson and Jamel Herring in a unification bout. They're fighting in October. I think there's going to be a big push for that, but I'm not going to guarantee that one because I think it's going to be Shakur Stevenson. And I'm going to be real with you guys. Valdez ran from Stevenson before. That's not to say he wouldn't fight him in the rematch now that he's got more confidence. He's even called him out after he knocked out Burchell, but that doesn't mean he's going to fight him for sure. So I would, I'm leaning, I don't know if Valdez would want to fight a former champ like Alvarado in his next fight. I just think if he's trying to stay busy and move forward, Alvarado's not a bad option. He's considerable, but I'm going to lean towards the less likely on that one. Now, #2 at 130 pounds is the undefeated WBA super champion, Javonte Davis. Not seeing this one. If Davis moves back down to 130, it's going to be because he's ordered to fight Roger Gutierrez, or it's going to be to fight, somebody like Chris Colbert or Xavier Martinez, who's also at 130, or better yet, I think in reality, it's probably going to be Gary Russell Jr. if he moves back down to 130 in a big fight, because he's cutting all that weight in between fights. It's going to have to be for a big fight. I don't think it's going to be to fight a mandatory challenger like Gutierrez or Colbert or Martinez at 130. None of those guys are big names. I think he's only coming down to 130 to fight a big name. Gary Russell's a big name, so I don't see that one. #3, Miguel Burchell, the former champ. I wouldn't be surprised, both these guys coming off of losses, if they fought. I really wouldn't. I think Berchelt, though, I'm leaning towards the less likely because I think he's going to come back against somebody who's less of a threat. But, you know, again, this guy, earlier in his career, Alvarado wasn't considered to be a quote-unquote threat. He was more of a gatekeeper. I don't think Berchelt would fight him next, but I wouldn't completely rule it out either. Number 4 is the WBO champion, Jamel Herring. If Herring were to beat Stevenson in October, which I don't think he's going to, I think the fight would maybe be possible if he couldn't get Oscar Valdez, but I think he would. So I just don't realistically, if now Herring I believe is going to lose, would he want to fight a former champ like Alvarado in his next fight? But more importantly, I don't think Alvarado would want to fight a guy with Herring's style in his next fight. So I'm going to say no to that one. Number 5 is the undefeated former world title challenger Shavkat Rakhimov. Rakhimov is fighting for the vacant title next, most likely. He's the number 1 contender in the IBF. And he'll probably take on Kenichi Ogawa. Most people feel he's going to win the title. If he does, would he fight a former champ like Alvarado next? It's possible if nobody else wanted to line up and fight Rakhimov, which, hey, that definitely could happen. So I think he might consider a former champ like Alvarado, but I think he'd more likely want to fight another champion or a guy in the top 10. So less likely on that one, I think, but you never know. It could be possible. He's number 5. Number 6 is a fourth fight with Roger Gutierrez. I don't see it. Gutierrez convincingly won their 3rd fight. I don't think there's a call or a need for a 4th one, although I wouldn't completely rule it out, but I'm not seeing it. Number 7 is Leo Santa Cruz. I really believe Santa Cruz is moving back down to 126. Coming off the loss, even if he were to stay at 130, coming off the loss to Javonte Davis, the knockout loss, I don't think he'd risk it and fight a former champ like Alvarado. Not next anyways. Number 8 is former IBF champion Tevin Farmer. You know, Farmer is a DAZN guy fighting for Matchroom. Now, he has talked about moving up to 135 in his next fight. I wouldn't completely rule out him and Alvarado, but I really don't think this one is going to happen. So I'm going to say no. Number 9 is the undefeated former featherweight champ, Shakur Stevenson. Now, Stevenson is fighting Jamel Herring next. If he were to beat Jamel Herring, which I think he will, most people feel he's going to beat him, would he fight somebody like Alvarado next? I think only if he had no other choice. But I really think the fight with Valdez could happen in the first half of next year. So I'm going to lean towards a no. I really would think it would be less likely, since Alvarado's coming off a loss, that he would get a title shot against Stevenson. But again, you never know. If people didn't want to sign up to fight Stevenson, maybe he would consider that. And Alvarado's number 10 for me, so that's where I think he stops. The more likely option, I think, for Alvarado is he's probably just going to come back and just shake off that loss and fight, you know, probably low-level competition next, try to get back in the mix. But I wouldn't completely rule out a title eliminator. Excuse me. And I wouldn't completely rule out anybody in the top 10 giving him an opportunity, considering he's a former champion and he used to be a gatekeeper type. He might just fill that role again, like I said. So that's it. That's the what's next on Rene Alvarado, the former WBA regular champion at 130 pounds super featherweight. I hope you guys enjoyed it. True Boxing, you've been hit with the truth.